think it's okay. So I spoke to my brother a few days ago during lunch, and he said that the speeches at our protests are largely a repeat of everything we've already said before. Though I wanted to poke him with my fork rather sharply, I remembered that positive criticism, however annoying it may be, is part of growth. So I took a deep breath, and I informed him that he was wrong, and even if he were right, which he wasn't, we wouldn't have to say the same things again and again if the government actually did something about them. Since that lunch, I've done two things. I've written my brother down for a lump of coal this Christmas, and I've also thought about what he said some more. Stewed, if you will. It's not the first time we've heard it, and hearing Julian's speech, he might be a little bit right. The truth is that Daphne was killed over 5 years ago now. It is a long time to still have to call for justice, but what's the alternative? Should we be quiet and let it be swept under the ever-growing, bulging carpet because we've become repetitive? I think we need to become louder. I've said it before. So forgive me for saying it again, but Daphne's assassination was not done in isolation. It was preceded by a series of events that created the perfect backdrop for her assassination. We saw top officials of the government get caught red-handed setting up offshore companies to hide their illicit gains, and we also saw them get away scot-free. We saw them receive the full backing of the Prime Minister of the time. We saw changes made in the name of meritocracy, persons elected to the top government posts without the required qualifications and experience. The fact is that we are reaping the effects of this today. With Daphne's death, not only did we lose one of the main critical voices that kept the government in check, but her assassination at the peak of government corruption set the tone for the next 5 years. Despite being heavily implicated in her assassination, even by means of witness evidence in court, the government has remained impressively untarred by the assassination, even being re-elected with a strong majority. Government accountability for its role in creating a climate that allowed her murder has been almost negligible. There has been no remorse, and coupled with rampant incompetence across the board, it has had a trickle-down effect. We are seeing persons abusing their positions of power in the full belief that they can get away with it. I mean, they've learnt it from the best. We see it with the latest scandals happening in the culture scene, with repeated reports of sexual harassment within the MPO being ignored, with the victim pressured to change her version of events, and witnesses allegedly told to remain silent by the CEO himself. We see it with the recent allegations of misappropriation of funds and harassment made against the Manuel Theatre CEO. Is it shocking? Yes, obviously, but really. What level of seriousness can you expect when the responsible minister is Owen Bonnici himself, who is notorious for getting away with the violation of human rights? I mean, these people have learned that the most likely consequence for their wrongdoing is getting a promotion. You can hardly blame them for trying their luck. We see it also with the recent horrific news that 3 young police officers were targeting and kidnapping migrants and beating them up in back alleys and abandoned buildings. We see it with yesterday's chilling video footage of Ian Borges' canvasser and a traffic enforcement officer launching himself at a person who was pulled over and lying defenseless on the floor. We watched this man, while on duty, savagely kick and punch a man in the head. We see it in the unrestrained buildings popping up on public or ODZ land, including the latest spa hotel for the pigs built in the Bidnia Valley. And this is literally just in the last few weeks. My only comfort, and the reason why I continue to come up here on this podium, is that through it all, there remains hope. We have the victim of harassment who pursued her claim against her MPO colleagues' continued harassment, the witnesses who refused to be cowed by the CEO of the MPO, the whistleblower police who reported her colleagues' kidnapping activities and violence against the migrants, the people who made yesterday's brutal attack by that enforcement officer public, and also those officers who jumped in and pulled their rabid colleague off a defenseless man. There is hope in the NGOs like Graffiti, Dinlart Helwa, Ramblers Association, BirdLife, in individuals like Claire Bonello and Alex Torpiano who continue to stand up and win their actions against the rampant takeover and destruction of the environment in this country. It means that there are good people in this country. People who, despite the horrific example that has been set in the last decade, still believe in right and wrong and who are willing to stand up for it. But we need to be louder. We need to be more. Our options are twofold. We either live our lives with our heads in the sand while the decay around us continues to fester, or we raise our voices and say that we do not want to live like this anymore. I can't promise that the latter makes for a fun life, but it's not fun living like this either. Standing up against a massive powerhouse that is a government is never going to be easy, but we do have the power to collectively chip away at that seemingly impenetrable armor. It is not impenetrable, we've seen it. My admiration for the work of people and NGOs in the Honda case, in Ahrash and Mzib case, not to mention the rule of law cases being pushed by Republica, it's outstanding. Their resilience and their tenacity is second to none, and more importantly, it is effective. But it is hard work. Making noise takes effort, but the results before the local courts speak for themselves. I also feel the raging frustration of my friends at the inaction of the AG and the recent blunders we read about in the news. But then I also ask myself, how can a small, relatively young team at the AG deal with the tidal wave of corruption that has rocked this country? How can you work serenely when the odds, by their very design, are so heavily stacked against you? I don't envy them. We need to clamour for the police and the AG to be given adequate resources to do their job well. Whistleblowing and dangerous investigative work by the police is futile if the prosecution is going to drop the ball due to being understaffed or ill-equipped. The bottom line is that the country needs to be equipped with a police force and a prosecutor's office that are properly funded, well-staffed with specially trained personnel who are able and, more importantly, willing to carry out full investigations into the high-level corruption taking place in this country. There needs to be serious and swift consequences for people who abuse their positions of power. We are not satisfied with them being suspended on half pay indefinitely. But people need to fight for it. You can rest assured that the government is not going to trip over itself to properly staff the police or the AG's office so that it can be better placed to prosecute the criminal elements within it and those who support it. Forget it. The same goes for the courts. We need to have a court system that is seen to be impartial, with adequate support staff and space for the judiciary to be able to do their jobs properly and in a timely fashion. I work in court. I can assure you there are no judges or magistrates who are twiddling their thumbs. We need this in order to right the injustices. And a government that is serious about improving Malta's rather dire reputation and who continues to talk about allowing the institutions to work needs to put its money where its mouth is. It needs to properly fund these essential services, pull up its socks, and start making changes. There is no justice for Daphne or any of us if the corruption that got her killed goes by unprosecuted. And if they drag their feet, as they have done for the last 5 years, it is up to civil society and the opposition to call them out on it and demand better, loudly, even if it means repeating ourselves. Change doesn't happen from the comforts of our homes. It happens in the streets, it happens in court, in front of and inside of Parliament, sometimes on the beaches, online and in print, in theatre, in art, where people stand up to be counted and refuse to let Malta's continued deterioration pass them by unmarked. Change happens through the work of ordinary people who have had enough. We've been a nation of gentle sheep for too long. It's time to get loud. Thank you.